Hi, my name is Esteban Cabrera Duran,
I'm Missy Ariano.
and we are joined here today by
Marco Vieira.
Marco. We are so excited to have you here. Marco, before we delve into our conversation today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a Hugsy student. I'm a part-time student, so I'm in my first year. And I work here at Harvard University in the Alumni Affairs and Development Office.
Wonderful. And about your family?
Yes, and I am a parent, and I live here in Boston, and I have a 7-year-old. And she's amazing.
She's amazing.
Yeah. Catalina.
Yeah, Catalina. And what school do you guys go to?
She goes to Brook Charter School in Rosendale.
She's been there since...
She's been there since she was in kindergarten. That's her. Yeah.
Okay, so...
It's right like 10 minutes from the house, so it's perfect.
Wonderful. So we're going to be interviewing you for our new podcast. I guess this can be our launch.
We're so excited to have you here,
Yeah.
Marco.
Thank you so much for
Thank you for
joining
having
us.
me. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah. So we'll just dive in. When you're thinking about your child's education, what is the most important thing to you and why?
For me, when I think about Catalina and her education, I want her to have an experience where she can be herself. I think the most important thing for me is that she sees herself and that she learns how she wants to learn. And I wish that she had more, I guess, ability to do that in these different school systems. We did our best to try to figure out which one could give her that, but there's so many limitations. So that's my dream always for her. Yeah, and it's important because I think I think anybody should have that ability to be able to learn how they want to learn.
Mm.
Thank you. So can you tell us about the moment you embarked on the IEP journey process? How did it start?
Yeah, so it's kind of cray-cray for us, crazy. So that Catalina, when she was younger, used to show have a tic that we noticed, and so it got more prominent as she grew up. And so when she entered school, all I could think about was social anxiety and not wanting her to have that. And so with each teacher, we would come in immediately and say, this is what she has. I didn't know anything about IEP. I didn't understand. I knew that there were different things just from my own experience, but I didn't know what that was. And so as I started approaching the school and asking for more help, they were offering different voice kind of things, but they kept telling me, well, it's not academically impacting her, so you don't have to worry about it, right? And that wasn't actually the case. It's just different teachers that were kind of just approaching her differently so that they didn't actually find the underlying problem. And so they were saying that she's a great reader, and they never thought about thinking of asking us more questions about her. So then how we ended up finding IEP was I actually went to the voice specialist they had there, and then they said, if you want her to have more protections and support, you actually need to get a 504. And I'm like, what the hell is a 504? Can I cuss on this? I'm sorry if I'm cussing.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
And I was like, what is a 504? And they was like, a 504 would give her more protections. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I didn't know. I was like, I don't know how to do this. So we actually went to Boston Children's Hospital because she was a patient there. And we were like, I need a 504.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, there's a whole process behind how you get a 504 and how you whatever. So I was like, okay, what do we do? And so they were like, well, you have to sign up to go to their developmental department. But their developmental department, there was a huge waiting list. And so we were like, okay, let's put her in the waiting list. We got her on the waiting list. And then they said, and then Catalina came home one day and said that one of the teachers told her she had to stop making the noise. And I was like, who told you that? And she said, one of the co-curricular teachers, they said I'm not supposed to make the noise anymore. And I said, well, that's not okay. So I went to the school and I was like, she can't not make the noise. And I had already discussed this with y'all. But how 504s and IEPs work, I found out later, were that you had to have you have to have this in place in order for it to be communicated to everybody. And so, because we didn't have anything in place, I had to keep meeting with every teacher to kind of tell them. Again, still had no idea what an IEP was, nothing. We were in the year process of waiting, and I was like, I'm just going to keep talking to the teachers, keep talking to the principal, keep telling them I need help. And then when we got to like halfway through the year of waiting, we went back to the hospital and we said, hey, not working. I was like, I can't be doing this. I don't have time to do this. So they said, they were like, okay, we have this clinic. It was a developmental clinic. Or behavioral clinic that you can try. And then in there, maybe they could help you, just get you started. And I was like, okay. So we went there, and that was another waiting list. So it was like a 3-month waiting list on that. So it didn't matter. We were still waiting list after waiting list. And then afterwards, they said, we were in that, we finally got in, we got assigned a woman, and then we just explained to her what it was. And she was like, oh, she was like, you need an IEP. And I was like, what is an IEP? And she was like, well, it'll help her to get the services she needs. And I was like, well, what about this 504 thing? And they were like, no, we think you need this. She takes out a paper that's some kind of like request from them that she filled out. She said, I'll fill this out for you. She filled it out and everything. And she said, just sign here. And she said, take that to the school. I was like, okay. And when I looked at it, it just had like these check boxes. She checked it off and then she just signed it. And I was like, all right. So then I finally took that to the school, and I still didn't understand what an IEP was until I was in your group.
Yeah.
Missy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I was in your group, I believe it was you and Addie who were talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, IEP, and then I connected the dots to the paper that they gave me, and then I was like, okay, let's get her this. And then that's how I first heard about it. But it took so long, just to get to the point of even hearing what
Lots
this
of
thing
different
is.
like channels and telling you to go here and do this.
Yes.
And when you were saying in the interview, you were talking about like protections.
Mhm.
What were you talking? Are you talking about like services?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So they have a lot of services. The schools talk about it. They have to legally have all these services. But it's not really like, I didn't feel like they were being offered to me until they had some kind of paper. And I thought I had to get a diagnosis. But it turns out she didn't need a full diagnosis, but she did at the same time, you know? So it was very confusing. And then I was talking to other teachers that I knew from my other job when I worked at the Chestnut Hill School, and there was a psychologist there, and he told me, he was like, oh, you just need to request it. And I was like, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Like,
Who do I go to?
yeah, like I had
What
no
do I
idea.
say?
Yes, I had no idea. So it was a long journey.
When
And
did you guys start?
we started
How long has this been since?
yeah, so she's in second grade now. We started it. It was in kindergarten that we started talking to the teachers about it.
Oh.
At the end of kindergarten was when I asked about the voice therapy thing, because I didn't know what it was. Because it was the end of the year, they were like, well, we can't do it now, you're going to have to wait till next year. So then I waited till she started first grade, and then that's when we got on the list, probably that fall. And then the year goes by, we haven't been off the list yet, and now we're going into second grade. And in second grade is when it really started showing up. And it wasn't just the tick, there were other things that were showing up that was causing her to get behind. And we knew that was going to happen, you know, and that's what bothers me about it all. We knew that's why we were trying to start
Yeah,
early.
you're trying to be proactive.
But yeah.
I think we went through number 3.
Yeah.
Right? What was your experience? Do you want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Marco, what support, if any, did you receive through this process?
After we finally got the IEP process, we got that paper in. when you put in a request, what I learned, the school's legally bound to reply to it within a certain amount of time. And I think it was like 30 days. So then we got immediately, like, they came to us and they were like, all right. But they kept saying, if she gets an IEP, because it wasn't guaranteed with the request, they have to do an evaluation. At the same time that they were going to do the evaluation, we then got off the waiting list from the developmental office or clinic through the Boston Children's Hospital, and they scheduled an evaluation. And they told us, cancel the evaluation with the school, we'll do the evaluation because ours is more thorough. And I was like, to hell with that. Just like, both of y'all are going to do evaluation, and then we're going to go from there. So we took her, and it was a 3-hour appointment. And they brought her in. There was a team. It was very thorough. They had a team of doctors that met us. It was like 3 doctors. One was a therapist. They were all different. And then they put her in a room, kind of like this little conference room. And there was a glass. And then they had her in there with one person who was kind of like the person who was going to do all the testing.
Yeah.
And then everybody else was behind the mirror. And then they took us all out. And the first test was like to see how does she react when we leave the room.
Okay.
And so I was at first she was like, and I was like, don't worry, I was trying to comfort her. And then I left, and then my wife came up behind me, and then they took us to another room, and we just were answering all kinds of questions. So they were evaluating us at the same time that they were doing her evaluation.
Yeah.
So that we did that, and they said, all right, we're gonna have a report to you. And I was like, great. Now what? Like, I was like, what do we do? And then they were like, we'll call you in a week. And I was like, okay. So then I go back to the school, and then the school finds out, not from us. Catalina told her teacher that she's
been evaluated.
She didn't say evaluated, but she was like, I was with the doctors. They were asking me all these questions. And then the teacher told the occupational therapist at the school. So they reached out to me, and they were like, did she have an evaluation already? Can you give us the report and what happened? And I'm like, I don't have a report. This just happened. I have no idea. They're like, well, we don't want to repeat the test. It's going to screw up the test. And I was like, well, now you know. Do you still need to do the evaluation? Oh, yeah, we're still going to do our evaluation. And I was like, is she getting an IEP? They were like, can't tell you that yet. And I was like, okay. So it was
like a little ping pong ball.
Yeah, it's like, and I kept imagining, I was like, if I wasn't who I was and how proactive we were about going up to the school and talking to them and going and doing these appointments and stuff like that, like having all this ability to do that, I kept thinking, like, how the hell does somebody who can't do appointments like this and can't bounce around and can't be meeting with every teacher, how the hell are they getting their kid on IEP? I don't even know.
These appointments were like during the day, right?
This is all during working hours. We're taking off, and a lot of them were last minute. We were like, okay, because at the children's hospital, they just schedule you. Like they don't ask you, they don't call you up and say, can you? No, it was scheduled. And I was like, okay, I guess on that Monday we're going to do this. And then they scheduled the meeting at the school, and I was like, okay, I guess we're
like court.
Yeah.
You're like, you just have to show up here.
Exactly.
What else is going on in your life?
Exactly. So that was crazy. But when they started the IEP process, they gave us this huge DocuSign document.
Okay.
And they were like, just read this and sign it. And I was like, I don't know what half of this means. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, my wife didn't like. My wife has she has ADHD, and it turns out that Catalina also has ADHD.
This was the other diagnosis that they kind of uncovered.
When they did the full evaluation, they were like, "Your daughter has ADHD. This is our recommendations. Things like that." Yeah. And so, like, as far as my wife's executive functioning, I'm the one that kind of does the paperwork. Because she's like, I can't. She's like, just explain to me what it is. I was like, okay. So I kind of I had to figure out what that was. And it did have, like, it was a lot of, like, jargon and just, like, things that I didn't understand. But I was like, I think we're okay. Based on my own abilities to know that. And then I was like, all right, I'm signing this. And a lot of it talks about appeals, and there was recommendations to get like lawyers involved if we thought we needed it for like reevaluation, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, but I signed it, and I was like, I don't think I need a lawyer, but if I need a lawyer, we'll figure that out too when that comes to that. So I was like, I don't know what I'm signing, but okay, here we go. So I signed it, turned it in, and they immediately did start evaluating her at the school. They didn't tell us when they did, and so I kept I was trying to prepare Catalina, so I was like, this is going to happen for you, but I didn't know when it was going to happen. And so that would have been nice. And I think that was one of your questions, but that was what would have been nice was, why didn't they tell us when they started so that I could talk to her and tell her, today you're going to be taken out of your classroom, which is weird, and you're going to sit with this other the other teacher you don't know.
Yeah. They're going to ask you a bunch of
They're going
questions.
to ask you a bunch of questions, and you're just, the good thing is she liked it, you know, because she's very, very social. And in her mind, she was like, they're letting me play with stuff, and they're she had no idea what was going on.
And they give her like fidgets.
Yeah, they gave her like toys, and she was allowed to leave the classroom. And then they were giving her fidgets, and she was like, "I need a fidget." She had no idea what was going on, and she wasn't freaked out, which I appreciate. But the whole time I was like, "You could have at least told us, though. Come on, like, why didn't you tell us?"
Did they have like a reason why they didn't want to tell you, or when you asked, or
no? I didn't. I never got to like go back up to them and say, like, I signed the paperwork, and when I signed that paperwork, and I did talk to the woman who was coordinating it, and she didn't give me indication that they would start. So my wife and I had no idea. And so when we found out that it had started, we were like, oh, okay. And then that's when they started contacting us, asking us for the report from the evaluation that she had at the hospital. And I was like, I don't have that report, so you're just gonna have to good luck. And then they said, okay, well, do you know what test they did? I'm like, why would I know? How would you know? Why would I know this?
I think this one is, what is your relationship like with your child's teacher? I guess we could talk about, like, we kind of talked about like what it was before, but like since IEP.
Yeah, I can say that I am very grateful to the teacher that she currently has. Because the woman, like, I think her daughter is very similar to Catalina, so she attached to Catalina. And so she was the only teacher. She had a kindergarten teacher, she had a first grade teacher. It's a second grade teacher that was like, something's wrong here. That it doesn't seem like she's picking up on certain, especially math concepts that were really bothering. But like her, she was like, that was her specialty, and it turned out. So she was like, so she was like, I noticed she's not picking up a lot of things that I would think that by now she should. And so that's when she was like, we had the parent teacher conferences with her. She gave us her phone number, and we were constantly texting her, like what's going on with her today. And I feel like she got more attached to her, and she just was like, listen, we can tell something's going on here. So like, she listened to us, and she helped us she's the one. It was a parent-teacher conference we had with her where she said, you should have her evaluated or something. Or like she said something like that. And I was like, we can do that, right? Like that's, so that I'm really in debt to her. And she ended up moving over to being she's now the assistant principal there during the year. And so the assistant teacher actually is now Catalina's teacher, who is even more attached to her. And it seems like they're being so super great with her. So I'm grateful for them. And what I told them in this last parent teacher conference, I said, I need your help. We don't have the report yet, because I still don't have that IEP report yet.
What?
Still waiting for it. And I said, since we don't have the report, the other teachers don't know. And so I learned that Catalina was being isolated, for example, whenever she was being disruptive in the class. So they would put her in a corner or whatever. And I'm like, through the IEP, through the evaluation that the Children's Hospital did, because I do have that report, it said that she does well if you put her closer to the teacher.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't isolate her, and because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And she's going to be more disruptive if you do that.
Counterintuitive.
So then, so then I learned that they were doing that. So I had to come in again, and I was like, listen. I was like,
do it all over again.
Yes. And I was like, if y'all can help me advocate for her while she's here. And they said they would. And so every time an incident came up, because it happened again she's in an after school program. They did it again in the after school program. And I went and picked her up. She was pissed. And I was like, what is going on? She was like, they put me on the bench. And she doesn't know that she can't be isolated. I didn't tell her that. She just knows that it didn't feel good, and she didn't understand what was happening. So I had to talk with them, and I got the principal involved, and I said, could you please just tell everybody, as because it seems like you have to like unless they have this report, it's like they just stop. It's like a siloed communication. They just don't talk to each other. And so that's been frustrating.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That sounds incredibly frustrating, to go through the process and, to
Yeah.
constantly be advocating for your own child.
Yeah, you have to.
And, um, and I'm wondering now, I know you mentioned a bit how, you would advocate for your child, but thinking about, has your child's experience at school changed after receiving an IEP?
Yeah, it did. I mean, immediately. So the process to get the report, one of the steps is they have to meet with us. And so we were there for a 2-hour meeting with the coordinator. There was an occupational therapist, like all these people who had evaluated her. And we wrote up the report together. So I saw the piece that I got to write up. And so I made suggestions. Her teacher was there. She made suggestions. And so during those times, like Miss Anise, who's her new teacher, knew everything that was in the report. She hadn't gotten a copy either. She says she hasn't. And so she started implementing things immediately. And then there was a math tutor that they brought in for her that also helps other students. And she said, she got out of that meeting. She said, I'm just going to start immediately. So I feel like we didn't have the report, but these teachers were like, this needs to happen immediately, so we're just going to take the steps. So they gave her fidgets.
Yeah.
They gave her a band that you put on your chair so that she can do some kicking. They sat her closer to the teacher. They even worked with Miss Anise now makes sure that she is around influential peers. So like it's either her friends or somebody who's calming, but she does good partnerships, then she does well. So then she was doing that. So they've done all that. It is like night and day because her math score was really low and they had us sign a paper that says she could be held back because of it. They were like, just FYI. And I was like, well, okay, I understand you're just letting me know. And I was like, should I get a tutor? They were like, no, you don't need that. And I was like, okay.
What do I need? Yeah.
And then all of a sudden her score is shooting up now. And I was like, I asked them, I said, so what are you doing? And it's because they're doing this thing where they're being more, they're taking her apart and they're like giving her more time with things.
Yeah.
They're doing all this stuff now. And I don't think any of that would have happened if we hadn't had that meeting. And I kind of think they're not even required to make it happen until we get the report, which we still haven't gotten the report.
Wow.
So she could have kept going down.
If they were like completely bureaucratic and they're like, we can't do anything until the report.
Exactly.
She would just be still.
Exactly.
Lucky.
And I feel very, very lucky that we had those caring folks in that room when we wrote up that damn thing.
Yeah.
That's great.
The IEP.
Yeah.
And so as you're sharing this with us and you're like reflecting, what advice would you give to other families that are going through this process with their child? Like, who were you over a year ago?
Good Lord. Keep going. I'm sorry. The paperwork, just get through the paperwork as best you can. And keep asking questions and keep advocating for your kid. Unfortunately, the way it's set up, they don't move forward. There's a lot of different, unless you have those teachers that are going to be like, I'm going to do it anyway. In order to get through that bureaucratic mess, you have to advocate. You got to show up for your kid. And I know that it's hard, especially with folks that need to be at work and stuff like that. But if you don't do that, she could have failed. She could have failed out. So I'm like, you have to, if you want your kid to succeed. And also, like, I would say every school seems to be different. So if you're able to, which we didn't do this, but if you're able to find the other parents within your school that have gone through this process, that might have helped.
Yeah.
And I don't know if their story would have been different from ours or what, but that might have been helpful, I think.
IEP support groups.
Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
I feel like the schools give out brochures to get you to come to the schools, but they don't write out these services either. Like, what if they had done that, right? That would have been something I would have asked for.
Yeah. Related to that, what do you wish was different about the IEP process?
Yeah, they have to be more communicative about it. And when a parent, we don't know the language. Like, we don't know what a 504 is or what an IEP is or whatever. all we know is that something's wrong with our kid. Like we are some, and I'm trying to change that language for myself too. There's nothing wrong with her. It's something's wrong with the system that they can't accommodate her, right? And so that's what I want to. I'm like, when a parent is coming to you and they're saying their child is having trouble learning, like listen to that and show them. Where's the brochure that shows all the services you offer? Like that. I'm like, I don't like put that out there and be like, this is a glossary of what is there. This is what a 504 is, and this is the eligibility for it. This is what if they had just given me that, I would have been like, oh no, it's an IEP, not a 504. Oh, it's this or that. You know what I'm saying? Just at least that at minimum would have been
brief
helpful.
Little definitions that can help you wrap your head around.
Exactly.
Of services.
Yeah, because
something you could go back and Google if you don't even know these words.
Right, exactly. And even if they would be willing to ask other parents, like I said, like some kind of support, if they could have asked other parents and been like, hey, we know you went through this process. These parents are going through the same process. Yeah, and connect them up. But they could have asked permission to do that so that it wouldn't be like privacy issues. But that's what I would want, just to help.
And so, like, you didn't really have any knowledge of IEPs before this, but like, how has your perception changed, like, since getting this and going through all of this? Like,
after going through that meeting at the school and watching them write the report, I really do believe that every kid should have something like this. Like, there's just no way that every kid wouldn't benefit from something like this, because it literally tells the teachers exactly what this kid needs to be successful. And then they could, like, they don't have to guess, and they don't have to, I mean, it's a blueprint for every kid. And if you had that, you can find commonalities, you can work around it as far as like your lesson plans or whatever you're doing. I just feel like they need to do this kind of evaluation for every kid. And that's freedom dreaming there, but that's what I would say.
that is what I say too. Yeah. As soon as we went through it, like, I was just like, this is what every kid needs.
Every kid needs
to succeed.
This.
Yeah, I like that blueprint.
Exactly. It's like it's necessary. What Catalina has could be helpful for a kid with ADHD or not. And I think that kids are wiggly and they need help, and you're putting them into these like places where you're asking them to sit still and be silent and be quiet for hours. I'm like, dude, like, give them fidget toys, like, and why do I have to create this entire documentation and have all these doctors for you just to do that simple thing? Like, it seems so silly. And also, like, the other thing that I wish that wasn't more explicit is how to discipline a child, or if we want to call correction, or however they want to call it, because a lot of the practices are isolating, and no kid I think works in that way. And so I feel like in her IEP, I had to push them very hard to say how they would correct her if she's doing something they don't want. And so we put in there about coaching conversations instead of isolation, and where to put her close to who and how to approach her. Like, we put very specific things because I wanted them to stop doing this isolation method. The problem is that method is still being used for other students, and there's nothing I can do about that right now. Yeah.
And it's like being very explicit with Catalina about like things that like expected behaviors.
Exactly. Like, if like her, like, they were making too many assumptions that she understood things, and you have to tell her explicitly, this is what you're doing and this is what you need to change. And she'll do it if you make sure she understands. She would come home when they were isolated. I said, well, why did they do that? And she was like, oh, he didn't like the sound I make. That's what she said. She thought that. And then he was like, oh no, that wasn't what, like, when we confronted him, he was like, that wasn't what happened. It was when I was asking them all to be quiet, and then she was trying to make them laugh or something like that. And then I said, well, what happened there? And she was like, well, she's impulsive. That's one of her impulsivity.
Yeah.
And so somebody pulled out another picture. She liked the picture, and so she was like, I really, like, she reacted.
Yeah.
Right. And she cannot help that.
Yes.
And so I had to explain that to this teacher. So that's definitely, that's something that I wish that I could help impact the rest of the school and how they kind of deal with the kids, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Marco. And just to kind of close out this interview, what are your hopes and dreams for Catalina?
Oh, Catalina, I hope that she continues her love for learning, because she really does have a love for learning, and she wants to know a lot of things. She imagines. I don't know if you guys seen the the movie Hook.
Yes. I
Yes.
love that
So
movie.
in that
Yeah.
movie, there's a scene where they have to imagine their dinner. Do you remember that piece?
Yes, yeah. They're
And
eating it.
yes,
And
and the adult was having so much trouble, and he was like, "Where is the food?" He's like, "I need
Yeah.
food." And they were like, "You have to use your imagination." And so she was kind of imagining things, and I asked her, I said, "Let me show you something." So I showed her that scene. She fell in love with that scene. We watch it every night before she goes to bed now. We have the little clip,
Oh my god.
because in it, the part where he said, she always repeats it, the part that where the little boy says to the adult, because he was able to finally see the food, where he said, "Peter, you're using your imagination." And then they had a food fight. So it's like she loves that part. So
The
like,
mashed potatoes and everything,
oh
right?
yes, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. So yeah, that's the part where she's like, where and like she saw that, and now she does it all the time. She writes her own stories more. Like, I just want her to continue imagining, keep learning, and I feel like I'm in there's that tension with the school where I don't want them to stop that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just hoping, because it happened to me, you know, it happened to so many of us when we were kids. I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen to her. So I feel like I'm just constantly wanting her to dream as much as she wants. That's my hope.
You're a good dad. You guys are so
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yes,
Yeah.
Wow.
love her to death. She definitely makes me see a whole new world all the time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very special.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Marco.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Marco, and thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah. Thank you all. And we'll see or hear you next time.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can think of a little.
Yeah, we'll
Let's
think
find
of
out.
something here.
Yeah.
It'll be smart and witty, so and funny.
I love it. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you for
Thanks.
having me. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Marco,
it.
for sharing.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah.